Hey, 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 happy Friday.
What's up, everybody?
Sash and Ash dropping in just to say what's up, share a little bit of story and inspiration. Sash, if you want to take it away, I'm putting this one on you.
Yeah,
Start
for
it
sure.
off.
So we just wanted to share about this incredible experience that we had yesterday. We were so blessed with the opportunity to sit down and eat lunch with some of our homeless community yesterday. And this was made possible through the sponsorship of Sports Med Rehab, and they paid for the meals to be made by the Barrie Colts team. And collectively as a partnership and team, we came together to have the meals prepared, these delicious meals, where Ashley and I were able to take them out into the community and sit down with some of the homeless people and just share a meal, get to know their stories, get to know them a little better. Because, sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to backtrack our journey in finding the community to, we've handed out food before on the streets, and, you drive around and you eventually find some people, but, we ended up going to a few places where we knew they'd be, and the reaction we got, just trying to talk, it's like, that ego comes up, that pride, that shame around, having to admit that they are on the street, to, a couple pretty girls, and especially for guys, it's just, they don't want to admit that that's the situation they're in when, two girls approach them and start talking to them. They, and we didn't want to have them feel uncomfortable or ashamed of that. So we brought our charm to it and really broke those barriers. But to see that resistance at first, and to, even just trying to get everyone to gather, it was a very awkward dynamic at first. Some people didn't show up. Some people were kind of just like, dispersed on the side.
Some people couldn't even look us in the eye out of shame, and it was just absolutely heartbreaking. And it wasn't until, in multiple situations, we were like, hey, we get it. We've been there. Like, we've both experienced homelessness. We've both experienced drug abuse and all these things. And then they would kind of start to open up and connect a little bit.
Like, almost like they didn't believe it, but like, it was just like a little bit of relief, you know?
Yeah, a little bit. And it allowed them to connect with us a little bit. But I think the first thing that really hit us was when we went to this tent city. And it's a spot that is pretty well known in our city where a lot of the homeless community resides, especially a lot of the drug addicts. And so we went there and it was all cleared out. There was nobody there. And we're kind of like, okay, we're walking around. We saw a few people. We're like, hey, do you guys stay here? And they were all sketched out. And they're like, no, I don't stay here. When we're like, well, you obviously, we could tell that they did. And we didn't really think anything of it. But there was a cop at the entrance with some other people doing a cleanup. And so we approached the cop and we were like, hey, like, are there people that stay back here? And she's like, well, we just kicked them out. Like they basically were evicted and told that they need to get out of here and they have till, this certain amount of time to come get their stuff.
Which I want to say, like, we totally get that we're not trying to encourage these things. We're not trying to encourage people sleeping on the street or but it's like, where else are they gonna go? They're probably in the best place they could be. They're
off the outskirts a little bit.
Yeah, they're in a bit of it's a walking path, but how many fucking walking paths do we have as citizens? Why are they not allowed to have a certain area where, we're able to give them a space of security and work towards building their mental state?
That's exactly it. And talking to some of the people that we know who have come out of this space and got, were blessed to have been able to be put into housing, something that was shared with me was like, okay, yeah, they're put into housing, but they're not given any other, mental resources, especially to upgrade their life. And so they just bring the same habits to those spaces and they destroy the properties. They end up back in jail. They, repeat the same patterns there. And there's just such a huge gap around what is needed. And the most heartbreaking part of it all is that these people are just
treated like animals.
And one thing that we really noticed, we already knew, but it really resonated, was that we're all the same. And these people are in these situations based on circumstances, based on maybe poor choices that they made that they're now paying for and cannot get away from. And the stories that we were able to hear from some of the people that we sat down and had lunch with were just absolutely heartbreaking. I don't know if you want to maybe share one or two.
Yeah, and I also just wanted to touch on, back to where we kind of started, was how awkward it was at the beginning. Some people didn't show up. Some people, were kind of just like distant, like really resistant, like not understanding, like really their walls were right up, which is so normal and totally okay. But by the time that we actually got to our little location and opened up the box, and everyone was just like laughing and having a good time and
so
connecting
good.
with each other. And we kind of had this idea that we were gonna go in and just like pick their brains and try to understand them and give them the insights that we've been learning, and it was totally not like that at all. It was more so us in their environment, getting to just like be in the presence of them. And through sharing stories and chatting with some of them further, we got to give a little bit of insight, but it was really a very different and humbling dynamic.
It was, especially when, a lot of these people, if you were to see them in the streets, they don't look approachable. They look rough, they're high on drugs, probably doing weird things that would be, kind of scary to a lot of people. But when we sat down and just came into a space of love together, everybody's walls started to break down. They were sharing things about themselves. They just opened up. They were just expressing appreciation. They were expressing what their needs are and what's missing and why they're struggling. And this one couple that really, really resonated with me in particular, they have been struggling with addiction to crack and heroin for about 15 years. And they got to a space over the last year where they had cleaned up, they got a place, they started doing somewhat well for themselves. And then some things happened where they invited some people to stay into their home. Long story short, things went bad. Somebody burned down their house and they ended up back in the streets. So they went to stay at one of our local support systems. I'm not going to say exactly which one it was, but the man's mother had a heart attack, and so he left for 2 days with his girlfriend to go make sure his mother was okay and to spend time with her. And when he came back, he wasn't allowed back and he got kicked out. So they were back in the streets. And when I actually talked with these people,
I'm going to actually vouch and say, like, that's a thing. I remember when I was in a shelter when I was younger, I was at a point in my life where I was dealing with so much internally and leaving an abusive, like hiding from an abusive partner. And all I wanted was my best friend at the time. And so I tried to stay with her as much as I could. And so I didn't want to necessarily be at the shelter. And I was told if I do not come back by within a certain amount of hours, it literally was like a few hours, and if I didn't come back and get all my stuff, I was going to be kicked out and they were going to leave it outside.
And we get it, because there has to be rules and structure and protocol and that, but for somebody on the other end dealing with that, there's so much to it. And I experienced the same thing when I stayed in shelter too, and I ended up having to leave because I just felt so alone and isolated and misunderstood. Yeah, right. And that's exactly how these people were feeling, and it was heartbreaking. And when we conversed with them, they were so intelligent, and I literally was just trying to spit so much love and light into their lives that I had them crying in tears. And this man, he was so beautiful. Like, to see him, he would not look like an approachable person. Like, I'd probably be like, ooh, I would not want to run into him in an alleyway. But this man was literally in tears saying, can you please just help my girlfriend? She just needs to be empowered. She has no self-worth. I want her to know how beautiful I'm getting chills. He's like, I want her to just know how amazing she is and know that she's capable. Like, look at her. And she couldn't even look us in the eye at first. She was like this, and she didn't even want to come and get food from us. And it was just terrible. And then she ended up opening up, saying that she had 3 children, and the father of her children abused her really badly and left her with nothing. And she ended up, turning to addiction for ways to cope, and got stuck there, lost her children, and now she's living in the streets. And she just had such a beautiful soul, and just, it was, the reason we're sharing this is because there's so much judgment, so much stigma, so much criticism around people who are homeless and who are addicts, but we don't stop enough to look at why they got to those positions.
Yeah, we can look at how easy it is to maybe clean up an act, and if they didn't do these things, they wouldn't be in this situation. But it's like, if we had tools to teach us these things and how to overcome our limiting beliefs and the lack of love and
Just how to
faith
get through
in
life.
ourselves, yeah, like we aren't taught this shit in school. You're taught how to fucking get a 9-to-5 job and fucking
Go to university.
grow up and have a family. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like you're not taught life skills. And if we were taught this, there would, from a young age, we would not be experiencing half the shit we experience in this world.
Yeah, it's so true. And you know, that was just one story. Like there was so many other stories, and like there was this older man who had, you know, he was addicted to meth and all these things, and he had like schizophrenia. The one gentleman we met at the, like on the box or whatever, and he was so bright, and he was just sharing all the gaps that he found missing and how he struggled so much with mental illness. And as he's explaining this, there's a woman standing beside him who Ashley actually knows and went to school with, who was so high on probably meth, I would assume, that she couldn't even stand up. She was like this and trying to put on mascara, and she had black all over her face, and she couldn't even talk to us. And
Yeah, and especially like it's one thing to see these people struggling so intensely, but when it's somebody that you know and we're friends with, and you literally are standing there like, I don't even know what to do right now. Like I literally felt so helpless. Not only because was she in a state that I wouldn't have been able to give anything that she could receive, but I was just like broken, like almost paralyzed in like, how do you even approach this? Is she gonna be embarrassed if she recognizes me, you know? And it's even more like you can just like walk by somebody you don't know, but how do you walk by somebody that you do know? And
that's the thing.
Maybe could have made a difference for, you know?
And they're all someone's son, someone's daughter, someone's brother, someone's sister. And you know, one of the things that I really got from speaking with one of the gentlemen was that, I think we're both getting emotional now.
Yeah.
People walk by them every day in the streets and can't even look at them, and you just literally make them feel like they're not even human.
And I know that that's not a space of people like just wanting to sometimes, yeah, but a lot of time it's like you do that because you don't know how to help, you don't know what to do, you know, if you helped everybody, you'd probably be broke. You know what I mean?
But it's not just money. Money is like, we think
It's
that
the
we need to give money and a place to
It's
sleep.
the love.
It's the love. We can't even tell you how much they were just expressing so much gratitude for us just seeing them and sharing time with them. It was, yeah, they loved the meal. They, you know, one guy even said it was the best meal he had had in years. But it was the time and the connection, and we really just, it made us feel so good. And so we want to encourage you guys that the next time you see someone homeless in the street, look at them, give them a smile.
Know that could be somebody that you love dearly.
And maybe all they need is a little bit of light, because even through the little bit of conversation we had with some of these people, we saw this spark come back into them. Like these couple people in particular, it was just, he was literally thanking me like, oh my God, I needed to hear this. Thank you so much. Like you're just reaffirming things that I know, that I lost hope and I needed this. I know you came into my life for a reason. Literally just through a 5-minute conversation, you guys. Everything that you have in your mind and your heart, you can share with other people. You can spark hope and inspiration and, you know, guidance. You don't need to have it. We went there thinking it was going to look entirely different. We had it all structured, what we wanted it to look like. And really all they just needed was our love. You know, and maybe that
we
doesn't
just
change.
threw the frickin', not that we had a script, but pretty much threw the script out the window, and we're just like, we're just here. We're just being, you know, we don't even need to say anything. It's just being. It's just being a loving, compassionate, seeking, a curious person, you know, trying to get into the world of somebody else and not just pass judgment and assumption.
Yeah, and you know, maybe it doesn't change their entire life overnight, but we both know from experience of being in a lot of those dark places that sometimes when you're so lost in the dark, all you need is a little bit of light to spark that in you.
Yeah, and just literally, like I know through my own journey, before my accident, there was somebody that was in my life pretty dominantly. He was an ex's best friend, and just being around his mentality, he's a powerful man, and not that he necessarily always used it in the greatest of ways, but just those little insights that I got from him, you know, stayed with me till even today.
Yeah.
You know, it was the introduction to my healing journey before I even knew I was on a healing journey.
I like that. We should quote that. Love it. Heard it here first.
Snowball effect, Sash and Ash, you know, Born Legacy, quoted.
You know, and it's funny that you say that too, because I just remembered, like, I remember when I was 19, after I left the guy I was with for 3 years that was very abusive throughout my teenage years. I left, I was staying with a friend, and you know, that's when I got really bad into the coke and all the drugs and everything, and I started taking that program, Youth Quest. Do you remember that?
Youth Quest.
I'll tell you about it later. You'll remember what I tell you. But anyways, I took this program, Youth Quest, and it was basically to help youth who were homeless or struggling, bring them into this program for free, where they give you a whole bunch of life skills and teach you how to basically be a contributing member to society, and just, you know, help you and to get a job, and then they'd get you like basically a co-op where you'd get paid and help you to get on your feet. And there was this woman, Jen Landria, and she just took such a shining to me. And I remember after I shared my story with her, she just, there was this connection that was built, and it was a very brief moment in time. It was literally like week, maybe a couple months, and she just spit so much life into me and just saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and would just build me up just verbally, and showed me that she cared, that it literally changed so much in my mind, where I felt for the first time I was worthy of something more. And guys, you all have the capability to make somebody feel worthy. When I looked at that woman yesterday who was homeless and an addict and had lost her children and couldn't even look at us to come share a meal with us, when I looked at her in her eyes and I said, you are worthy, you are beautiful, your circumstances do not define you. It doesn't matter that you're here. This doesn't have to be your story. There is more to you than this, and you know this. I'm just here to remind you. She looked up in my eyes for the first time and started bawling her eyes out and saying, thank you. And that was all she fucking needed, guys. So when you think you can't make a difference, when you think that those people in the streets, you know, they're just low lives and they chose to be there, it's bullshit. And yeah, there's, you know, there's people that get fucked up and they choose, you know, whatever.
They choose to stay there, but it's because they don't believe they're capable of anything else, or they don't necessarily
think they're worthy.
feel comfortable outside of that comfort zone because they haven't built up enough confidence yet.
There's that. And then, like, you know, for example, I was talking with a friend the other day, and he was like, well, there's so many resources for homeless people and there's all these things for them to do. Okay, when you really stop to think about it, sure, there's a job bank. Where are they showering? Where are they shaving? Where are they going to get clean clothes to wear to work? Because if they don't have those things, ain't nobody hiring them. Then these same people, some of the same people we're talking about, they have money, you know, they get disability, so they have some kind of income. The one girl gets welfare. Nobody will rent them an apartment because they have poor credit and no previous renting experience that was good. So they can't even get a place. So, like, there's just so many gaps.
Every situation and every story is different, and we can't assume it's all the same.
No, and even when it is drug addiction and things like that, people don't choose drug addiction. I even said to those people, like, what? I asked this one man, what made you start doing crack and meth? And he's like, you know, I didn't have guidance. I got kicked out when I was 15 years old. I was around drugs, and I just, you know, I tried it one time, and then I tried it, you know, the odd time after, and all of a sudden I was hooked, and I didn't know how to get away from it. And I get that, like,
but it's also like the childhood experience, you know, like, yeah, they got kicked out. They were probably being a stupid child, you know.
Who's not?
We're all stupid, right? But it's like
we're all stupid.
we are. We all make dumb decisions and act out and in our own ways, right? But it's like the reasons that lead us to those addictions. Yeah, first of all, an addiction, you get hooked. Like, it's not always easy to come out of that.
And you think it's never gonna happen to me. You always think it's not gonna happen to me.
Right? And a lot of the time it actually stems way beyond those years and goes into even, you know, deeper roots in childhood of believing in themselves, you know, of not, you know, people hang around a certain crowd because they feel like that's the only place they fit in, right?
That, and even like your environment, right? Like, you become a product of your environment. There's so many instances where people are just exposed to drugs and exposed to these bad environments, and it's normal to them, so they just naturally fall into it. Sometimes at like 9, 10, 11, 12 years old. You know, that's not, what 9-year-old makes a decision to freaking do it? Like, they don't even have the ability of making a conscious good choice, and yet now this is the product of their life because they didn't have the right setup in life, you know? So it blows my mind. And we're so humbled to have had that experience yesterday and to build those beautiful relationships that we did with some of our homeless community. And if it's hard because what can we do to really alter their lives? And I think whether people are homeless, whether people are struggling with anything in life, doesn't even matter if they have millions of dollars and they're struggling mentally. Maybe we can't necessarily go in and change somebody's entire life overnight, but what we can do is we can spread love and we can be light, and that makes such a difference.
Just by changing your demeanor when you walk by them, that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of acting terrified and completely avoiding and just ignoring that they're even a piece of life here, just say hi.
Yeah.
How's your
See
day
them.
going?
Because
just point out something that you can always find something that you think is cool or
I
beautiful
like your
about
eyes.
them. Yeah, like I like your style, or whatever you think is gonna people wear the things they like. You can tell that somebody cherishes something, in the way that they carry themselves. And if you can just find one thing that you think that they're gonna really be lit up about, it doesn't have to be so complex. It can be simple, right? Just like, I like your eyes. You got beautiful eyes. You got a beautiful smile.
Yeah, and sometimes we think we need to give so much. I think that's just in all areas of life. We always think we need to be doing all these things and being all these things, and we have to have this huge impact, or we don't realize how us just being makes more impact than anything. It really does. So we really want to challenge you guys to not turn a blind eye to those who are struggling around you, those who may look unapproachable. Quick story that I also want to share, just to kind of give another side of the spectrum. I was walking down to our lawyer's office a couple of weeks ago, and I had my dog with me, and I was dressed all bougie because I'm going to see the lawyer, right? So I look pretty fly, and I'm walking down the street, and there was these two homeless men that were younger. They're about my age, actually, and they were really fucked up. They were high as shit on something, and normally, not out of judgment, but I would have just kept walking because I've been I don't want to associate myself with that energy just because I've been down that path and I don't want to. But something in me that day was just you know what, just stop and say hi. So I did, and I stopped for a minute. The guy made a comment about my dog, and so I just sat and listened. We ended up talking, and they were all high on something, scratching and twitching and all that. And one guy was all whatever. And I just allowed myself to come out of any judgment or any not judgment, because I'm not really a judgmental person. I'm human, so judgments do come up, but out of that ego mind and out of the fear and uncomfortability more than anything. And I just sat and I allowed myself to just listen to him. I barely even talked. I just listened to him for 5 minutes. He was talking about pit bulls and how he loves pit bulls because my dog's a pit bull, and went on. And I was just oh, cool. But I just held space for him. And then as I'm walking away, he's like, "Excuse me, miss." I turned around and he said, "Thank you so much for taking the time to just listen." And just that other confirmation that that's all we need to do, guys. We just need to hold space for each other and just love one another. It makes such a difference.
Yeah, and like Sash said, sometimes she has these feelings of, she just keep walking. She doesn't want to associate with certain energy. It's you don't have to always, but when you get an incline to just say something, or when you can break down that fear or that judgment, those walls that kind of get built up, and you take a moment to do it once in a while, that's what makes a difference, right? It's not about, changing your whole life, go spending it every day, all day, or, it's just when you feel inclined to say something, say it. Don't hold back, because you never know what that person needed to hear.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's well, some of you may be asking yourself, well, how is that going to make a difference? How is, giving them a compliment? Just visualize this for a minute, okay? You are living alone in the streets. You have basically nothing of value. You don't even know where your next meal is coming from. People walk by you every single day and just ignore the fact that you are sitting there struggling, feeling completely lifeless, totally unworthy. How good do you think you feel about yourself? You're feeling like you're nothing. You're feeling like you are beyond scum. If you died today, nobody would even fucking notice you. Nobody would care. It wouldn't make a difference. Now, if someone comes into your life and gives you some kind of sense of worth for even a moment, that has the ability to change everything. Because as easy as we can get into a downward spiral, we can send people in an upward spiral, and we don't have to get them to complete love and joy and bliss. But if we can give them hope, which is that at the bottom of that upward spiral, next comes, from hope, then maybe they have a little bit of inspiration. Maybe they have a little bit of self-acceptance. Maybe they have a little bit of, trust, anything. And it can ripple up as well, right? And maybe it doesn't, but try. It takes 2 seconds.
It's not gonna hurt you.
No. And if anything, it will actually just make you feel good.
Yeah.
And
if they don't receive it, know that that's okay and shake it off.
Oh yeah, girl. Like Ashley was saying, there's been many times where we go out and we'll just bring extra food out to the community and try to just give it to homeless people and stuff. And there's been so many circumstances. I remember this one guy, I went up to him. I don't know if I probably told you about this. But I made this nice meal. It was a nice pasta. I had a whole bunch left over, and I packed it into these tins, and I took Jada out with me, and we went downtown to hand them out. And there was this guy sitting on the bench, and he clearly, he looked starving. He looked miserable. He was picking up cigarette butts, smoking them. And I went up to him, and I was like, hey, I have this meal. Would you like it? And he looks at me and he goes, do you have $20? And I was like, no. He's like, then fuck off. And I was so hurt, and I was like, well, fuck you, I'm going home, I'm taking this pasta home, and I'm not sharing it with anybody. And then I was like, no, who knows what's going on for him? Maybe he's feeling I don't know, maybe he needed, his substance to fuel whatever downward space he was in emotionally. Maybe he's sick of feeling like a charity. I don't know, but who am I to judge, right? Just do small things with great love, and you can make a difference in the world. That's the moral of this story. I don't know if you want to wrap up with anything.
No, I'm not on my A game today, just saying.
It's been an emotional ride, though. It really has.
Yeah, for sure. No. I think just every day wake up and, wonder what could you do today to make somebody's day a little bit better, Even if it's somebody in your family, it doesn't have to be somebody on the streets, just how you could send, that's one thing we do to each other, and people that we care about or just randomly think of, we'll shoot them a message and just tell them how fucking awesome they are and big them right up, because we know how much that makes us feel so good. And just especially in the morning, it's just damn,
such a good thing to wake up to.
Yeah, that just, it makes your day, even if it is not the morning, you know what I mean? That person's always going to receive it exactly when they need to,
Exactly
so it doesn't have to be just, homeless people or people you see on the street. It could be your own family. Relationships are the core of life. Without each other, we are nothing. So we have to work to empower each other, uplift each other, make each other feel good. Because when you do that, you're also going to get that right back in return. Because it's just a law of attraction, a reflection,
Yeah, and we have that need for contribution too. So when we are contributing in whatever way, it just does something. It's almost like we give so much, not because we're selfless, but because we're selfish. And it makes us feel good too. It does. What do you think we do what we do? Just, of course we want to make impact, but it's not just for the other people. It lights us up. As human beings, we have a need to contribute to something higher than ourselves. And we may not know you, but we do know this about you. You, like all of us, like me, like Ashley, like every single person in the world, regardless of your race, your culture, your gender, your age, your ethnicity, whatever, your social status, economic status, we all have a desire to be loved and a desire to feel worthy. We have a fear of not being loved and a fear of not being worthy. So if you can just spread love to somebody, you don't even know what you're doing for their soul. You really don't. I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
Happy Friday, everybody.
Peace and love.
Peace.